to meet your family, sweetheart.
I'ma keep it a beanbag with you. I thought Welcome to Derry was gonna ease us into the backstory with a few red balloons here and there, a couple goofy bullies. No, they opened this joint up like they was trying to see how many viewers they could traumatize. This is the crazy first episode for a TV show that I've seen since I've been watching TV. Episode 1 is straight to the horror, symbolism, and heavy historical references. This evening, we're going to talk about all of that and more. But before we do that, I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in. And if you're new to Real Enigmas and Theories, welcome. This video will contain spoilers for episode 1 of Welcome to Derry. So without further ado, let's cook. We'll do a brief recap on all the heavy parts and make notes along the way. So this joint starts off inside of a movie theater where the crowd is watching The Music Man. And we're definitely going to talk about the hidden meaning of this later. Harold Hill in the movie was in the middle of his trouble speech when an usher came to escort a young boy with a black eye out of the theater for sneaking in without paying. I mean, homie got a box of Cracker Jacks, but he ain't paid to get in. The boy is young, but he's way too old to be sucking on a pacifier, but that's exactly what he's doing. The boy's name is Matty. He runs away to hide from the man, and he hides behind a Geronimo poster stand. A young girl who works at the theater helps him get away, and it looks like she works there with her father. She's probably who slid him that box of Cracker Jacks, because you can see she's munching on 2 lollipops herself. Anyway, the usher ends up seeing Matty and chases him out of the building. And it appears that it's around Christmas time, judging by all the decorations and the weather. Now, we do know that all of the other movies for It take place in the summertime, so I'm wondering if It can come back anytime during that 27 year, or has he just been out cooking this whole time since the summer? So after Matty runs off, he's now walking outside the outskirts of town, hitchhiking in the snow. And this right here is where the Band-Aid just gets ripped off. The family pulls over, the dad's driving, the mom is in the passenger side, very pregnant, and 2 kids in the back like regular folks. The dad says that he'll get the boy back home to his parents, and Matty says anywhere but Derry. The mom says that they're on their way to Portland, and they'll take him with them, but what were they supposed to do when they got to Portland? Is he just living with y'all now? Other than that, everything feels normal until it doesn't. Halfway through the ride, the daughter pulls out a container of raw liver and starts sticking her fingers in it. The brother starts spelling all kinds of bizarre words cued by the mother. All kinds of crazy shit starts happening. The daughter pretty much says that she's down for whatever when they get to Portland, and the mom and the dad starts making jokes about how the daughter is getting loose with the boy in the back seat. I mean, the mom said that they gotta super glue the girl's legs shut, and then the dad was like, well, she reminds me of her mother. And then the whole family started laughing like the dad just told a joke on Leave It to Beaver at the dinner table. So Matty notices that even though they've been driving straight the whole time, they're right back in Derry. And Matt asks could he get out the car. He realizes that the door's locked and he can't get out, and so he panics and tries to grab the steering wheel, and he accidentally hits the mother in the belly. All of this is going down while the family is still spelling words together with the little son in the back. Then the family starts chanting the letters O-U-T, and the mother starts screaming while going into labor. You got the father swerving, kids laughing, chaos breaking out, and I bullshit you not, the mom pulls her panties to the side and gives birth while she's riding shotgun. But this isn't even the crazy part. I mean, shorty pulled her panties to the side and gave birth to this baby like she was having a Taco Bell episode. She delivers a 2-headed baby with wings, and she holds on to the umbilical cord like she got a rabbit flying chihuahua by the leash. And then the baby flies to the back of the station wagon and cracks the back window. I mean, this baby looking like he hopped up out the grease at Wingstop. You got the dad still swerving like he hitting switches, the kids laughing in the back, and young Wingstop flies into Maddie's face, breaking the car window. So the pacifier flies out the window and into the Derry sewer system, and this was only the first 10 minutes. I mean, I thought the first 10 minutes of From was crazy, but this joint was like some American Horror Story type shit. We meet a few characters at Derry High School. You got Lily, Margie, Teddy, and Phil, or I like to call them Phil and Ted. And then right on to Major Hanlon and Captain Russo meeting Colonel Fuller, who's been driven by none other than Dick Halloran. They do a little chit chat about the possibility of a nuclear engagement and the normalcy of the town Derry. And right away, we get a little bit of racial tension with Major Hanlon as he's met with Private Masters, who acted like he had a problem saluting his superior. Later, the two boys that we saw at the high school, Phil and Ted, are discussing the disappearance of Maddie. Maddie was kind of their friend, but not really their friend because they had to be paid to go to his birthday party. And they were figuring that he probably left town on his own due to that and problems that he was having at home. Then we have the girl Lily having a flashback of being at a secret hangout spot with Maddie. She's remembering a time where they traded gifts from the Cracker Jack box. She got the little rocket and Maddie got the turtle, but she traded with him. And this is already a nod to the turtle maturing with the second turtle reference. Actually, there was a turtle reference at the high school with Bert the Turtle with Duck and Cover. I actually go into that in depth in my first video about It Welcomes to Derry. Here it is right here. Check this out. It's also the second time that we hear the name Looney Lily Bainbridge. Teddy called her that back at the school. Now, while they were at the hangout spot, Lily told Maddie about the tragic accident at a pickling plant where her father lost his life, and her nickname is most likely linked to the trauma from that incident. Her flashback is taking place on New Year's Eve, so that crazy scene with Maddie and the crazies in the car had to have happened after New Year while Christmas decorations were still up. After her flashback, her mom reminds her about tomorrow's trip to visit the grave of her father. Lily's mother tells her not to forget to take her medicine, which is probably also tied to her nickname. After her mother leaves the bathroom, Lily hears Maddie in the tub drain reciting the words from the Music Man scene about trouble in River City, and then she sees his bloody fingers in the drain. The next day, Lily tells Margie what she saw, and Margie doesn't believe her. Then somebody farted in the bathroom.
What's that supposed to mean? It wasn't me.
It was probably her. After school, Phil and Ted have a crazy conversation about why men have nipples while they slide to the hangout spot. And when they pulled up to the hangout spot, Lily was there ready to talk to them about Maddie. She finds out that the boys' friendship with Maddie wasn't the most solid and that they'd only invited him to the hangout spot one time before. She told them about hearing Maddie in the bathroom, and of course they didn't believe her. But later on that night, Teddy has a vision of his lampshade being made out of human faces, and I think his belief towards what Lily said changed right after that, because the next day he met with Phil and Lily and told them about what happened with the lampshade. Now, Phil is Jewish, and right before he had this incident with the lampshade, he asked his father about children being taken underground and being kept there. His father tells him about how Holocaust victims' skin were used to make lampshades. So this probably caused a fear within him, and we know that it uses your fears against you. So this is probably why his vision, in fact, this is why his vision was of the lampshade. So Phil and Ted and Lily head to the library to do some investigative research on Maddie's disappearance. Oh yeah, they've got Phil's little sister Susie with them as well. They find out by a newspaper clipping that the last time he was spotted was actually on January 4th by the daughter of the theater employee. That's Ronnie, the girl who helped Maddie hide from the usher. So they track her down, and Ronnie tells the kids that her father was blamed for the disappearance of Maddie, and that the cops had been to his house and tried to pin that on him, but it didn't stick. So that part right there kind of confirmed for me that the dude that was with her at the movie theater is her father. And it's kind of obvious that he works in the projector room, because when we saw her and him at the movie theater, he had a bunch of film reels. So as they're talking, they all realize that Lily and Ronnie both heard the sound of children singing in the drain pipes. So Ronnie decides to take the whole group to the movie theater and show them where the song that Maddie was singing actually came from. Back at the Air Force Base, Leroy Hanlon gets ready for bed, reading over the news and looking at a picture of his family before turning the lights off. Long story short, he's ambushed by masked men asking for classified information about his mission on an aircraft that he's to pilot in a few days. They threatened him at gunpoint, but they didn't fire a shot, so they obviously didn't actually want to kill him. But his buddy Russo comes in and fights them off, helps them fight him off, and they didn't shoot him either. So they both fight off the men, but now the eyebrows are peaked and suspicions are real high. I'm wondering if the dude Masters has anything to do with that. Meanwhile, Ronnie must have took her father's keys because she was able to open up the movie theater like it wasn't nothing. She goes upstairs to the control room to set up the movie. And Lily, Phil and Ted, and the sister Susie were down in the theater talking about the regrets of how they may have treated Maddie before his disappearance. They didn't want anybody to notice, but both of the boys were crying about the way they treated Maddie. Anyway, the movie starts, and this scene is even crazier than the first one with the crazy family in the car. So the Music Man starts playing for Lily, Phil and Ted, and Phil's little sister Susie, while Ronnie is upstairs running the projector. The movie is playing normally until the kids notice Maddie on the screen as if he was inside the film. The kids don't know it, but the family from the car is also in the movie, and Maddie is holding young Wingstop swaddled up in a blanket. Maddie then comes to the front of the screen and then starts taunting the group with the guilt trip about how they treated him. Then he tosses young Wingstop out of the screen and into the theater, but this time he's the size of a bloater from The Last of Us. Yeah, we calling him Young Wingstop for the rest of the series. And young Wingstop ends up eating Phil and Ted and Phil's little sister Susie. Ronnie's up in the projector booth and really can't see what's happening, and she has to break her way out of there with a hammer that she ends up bracing the theater door shut with after her and Lily make it out of there. Ronnie couldn't really see what happened, and Lily was having a real hard time trying to explain what she just saw. Then the episode ends with Lily standing there holding the hand of Phil's little sister, screaming. Look, I'm gonna tell you, this is the craziest pilot I've seen for a show in years, maybe ever. First, they give us a little taste at the beginning with the family in the car, and then they brought young Wingstop back at the end, and he snapped out and actually ate some kids in a movie theater. That's crazy. And with both of those crazy scenes, they dropped a bunch of symbolism in both of those scenes, but it was all over the episode for real. So we're gonna dive into that. So let's start with the beginning of the episode in The Music Man. With this show being set in 1962, we're taken to the height of nuclear warfare, segregation, and racial tension. Not to mention, this is one of those periods in time where the government was lying their asses off about everything. Not that that's really changed, but this was also the year that the Music Man film was released. It's a musical originally on Broadway in 1957, then a film in 1962, both by Meredith Willson. It's about a con man named Harold Hill who arrives in small-town Iowa, threatens moral panic, and convinces the people to form a boys' marching band. The setting is a small, mostly white Midwestern town in the early 20th century. Now, the episode starts by showing us the Music Man during the part where Harold Hill gives a fiery sermon about trouble right here in River City. And he's exploiting the way that some white Americans historically turn modernization into a moral panic. And his speech hit like one of those real revivalist preachers who warned that sinful influences would corrupt the nation's youth. The so-called sinful influences that he condemned were pool tables, ragtime, and shameless music. Now, from about 1890 to 1960, whenever a new music style rose from the Negro communities like ragtime, jazz, blues, rock, white moralists described it as jungle music, savage rhythms, sexual, corrupting, or devilish. And by the 1950s, when The Music Man was written, that old ragtime panic had evolved into the rock and roll panic. The song that he was singing had lyrics like, "That'll grab your son and daughter with the arms of jungle animal instinct." Now, TV preachers and newspapers warned that Negro rhythm and blues would lead white teenagers into crime, drugs, and sex. So audiences in the 1957 time period instantly recognized Hill's sermon as a parody of those same talking points. And with Dick Halloran being in this series and knowing the history of the black spot in Derry, makes me think about how a movie with these overtones was playing in Derry during 1962. Other lyrics like, "We're in trouble, folks, right here in River City. Remember Maine, Plymouth Rock, and the Golden Rule." Remember Maine is a patriotic war cry to the Spanish-American War. You have Plymouth Rock and the founding of white Protestant America, and the Golden Rule pretty much represents Christian morality. He talked about wearing knickerbockers below the knee, and knickerbockers were originally a part of European aristocratic and later Victorian sporting attire, mainly worn by golfers, cyclists, and schoolboys roughly around the 1860s through the 1930s. But the style of wearing them, especially how they hung below the knee, changed through Negro cultural influences by the early 1900s. Negro men in northern cities, especially during and after the Great Migration, began adopting and remixing formal white clothing with swagger, a little bit of high collars, some sharp creases, pocket chains, and looser trousers. And this evolved into the sporting man or the shine boy aesthetic seen in Harlem and New Orleans. It was flashy, but it was respectable. When you look at early photos from ragtime musicians, vaudeville performers, and black baseball teams, you'll see they often wore their knickerbockers or +4s lower and baggier than the white sports standard. Not tightly buckled right below the knee, but loosely hanging a few inches. That looseness gave a little rhythmic style swagger to the trousers, you know? And you could even say that they stylized that garment into something expressive, because everybody started wearing it like that. This exaggerated below-the-knee version spread to white culture through vaudeville, the Harlem night lifestyle, and the swing fashion. Even white athletes later started copying the look in the 1920s and 30s as +4s. And this was popularized by golfers like Bobby Jones without acknowledging that the swagger came through the Negro performance circuit first, also known as the Chitlin Circuit. Harold Hill even mentions Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, a magazine that played a big role in shaping the early of 20th century American pop culture, including the racialized humor and the entertainment scene that later fed into both jazz and the vaudeville circuits. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang was published from 1919 to the early 1930s, and it was created by a World War I veteran from Minnesota named Wilford H. Fawcett, or Captain Billy. It was full of that risque humor, slang, jokes, and it even had pinups in there. It was basically like an early version of Mad Magazine or the Playboy, blended with bar jokes and bullshit. It was extremely popular with soldiers, jazz musicians, and working class men. It even had a slogan, America's magazine of wit, humor, and folly. The Whiz Bang circulated in the same cultural circuits as vaudeville, jazz clubs, and speakeasies, which were heavily influenced by Negro music and performance. Everything going on in vaudeville and the speakeasies and jazz clubs were coming directly from the Chitlin Circuit. Many white entertainers who performed in black-style venues used to bite jokes directly from the Whiz Bang. And the reason why it did that is because the slang from the book was mimicking the Negro vernacular of the jazz age. The Whiz Bang popularized terms and comedic formats that originated in black vaudeville and street performances. They just repackaged it for white audiences. funniest part about Hill's sermon is that it's a performance of black energy, rhythm, and syncopated music, just like jazz itself. And how you gonna use that style to warn the town against those same kind of rhythms? Them starting the episode with this scene from The Music Man is definitely gonna be a tonal presence throughout the whole season, because we've been hearing that trouble word over and over and over again throughout that first episode, so I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. Even the little boy was spelling trouble inside of the car, and that's what fueled his sister to scream at him. Lily heard them saying trouble in the drain pipe, and the theme of Harold Hill's warning definitely fits with what some of the townspeople of Derry were thinking. Now, speaking of that family, we have to talk about the birth symbolism, with the goofy mom riding shotgun in the Cadillac death trap, her and young Wingstop. You can go check out my first It video where I spoke about it having eggs. The ovum and the egg symbolism is very heavy throughout the entire It lore. Not so much in the 1990s miniseries, but it was definitely in the 2017 and 2019 movies. I would even say as much as Turtles. Now, the birth of young Wingstop speaks for itself as birthing symbolism, right? However, young Wingstop itself speaks to the birth and origins of some aspects in Masonic symbolism. The rebus, from the Latin res bina, meaning double thing, is the final stage of alchemical transformation. It's depicted as a two-headed being, one male, one female, often with wings and standing on top of a serpent or dragon. In one hand it holds the compass, and in the other hand it holds the square. And both of those together represent divine geometry and balance. And this is where Freemasonry pulled the compass and the square from, because Freemasonry grew out of the Hermetic and Rosicrucian philosophies, and it was later incorporated with the same tools and ideas. The Masonic compass and square mirror the rebus symbols of moral and cosmic order, and the rebus itself predates Masonry. The geometric and the philosophical essence of the rebus align perfectly with Masonic ideas of balance, symmetry, and enlightenment. The only thing about this is that the religious authorities often saw the rebus as a dangerous fusion that blurred divine boundaries. So they took the concept, flipped it and bounced it, and put it inside Freemasonry. Now, in that first video that I did about it, I also spoke about Metatron's cube. And this creature could also be a nod to the description of Metatron. Metatron originates in the mystic branches of Judaism, primarily in the Merkaba and the Kabbalistic texts. In mystical interpretation, Metatron's two faces reveal a dual nature, one turned to God shining with mercy and creative light, the other facing creation with burning judgment and order. Symbolically, Metatron is the living blueprint of divine architecture embodied in the sacred figure known as Metatron's cube. I talk a lot about that and how that also connects to the Losers Club and these children in Welcome to Derry. I talk about it in the first video. You got to check it out. And to have young Wingstop come back at the end and actually take out some characters that we actually started caring about, like, I totally didn't expect to see Phil and Ted go so soon, and how his little sister was just riding along to go get a milkshake and got caught up in all this bullshit. I mean, the vibe and energy that Phil and Ted had, it did not feel like they were gonna just take them off the board like that. That is crazy. So if they can get us invested into characters like this and automatically take them off the board like that, we are in for a wild ride, I'm telling you. Also, I'm kind of worried about Ronnie's father, because the cops already tried to pin Maddie on him, but they couldn't let it stick. But now they got his keys opening up the theater. I mean, it's obviously real because Lily's standing there holding the girl's hand. I'm presuming it's his hammer that's got the doors locked up in there. So I'm wondering what's going to happen with that situation, because somebody's got some explaining to do. I mean, there's a lot more symbolism we could have talked about. We could have talked about the usher and the usher's symbolic role as Tyler in Freemasonry. We could have talked about the origin of Cracker Jacks. We could have even gone into that Geronimo poster that Maddie hid behind. And we might have to go into that later because the Native American presence is there. So stay tuned for that. And we've definitely got to talk about the fact that Lily was a patient at Juniper Hill. We didn't talk too much about the Bert the Turtle references as well with the duck and cover. I might do another video to cover that as well because it definitely relates to maturing and other things, but we'll have some more for another video. So there it is, a dope recap, some historical and esoteric coverage of the Welcome to Derry pilot episode. And if you like this video, go ahead and tap that screen for me a few times by hyping, sharing, liking, and if you're not subbed yet, hopefully this video will be the one to make you do it. That's all for my video this evening. I'll catch you in the next one.